Hello YouTube, it's the end of the year. Let's do a reading wrap up featuring some stats. Okay, first let's talk about all the books that I read from October to December to finish out the year. The first book I read was actually a reread. I reread People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. This is a romance book I have read before. I have read all of Emily Henry's romances, and I wanted to reread it before the movie comes out in January, and I think I enjoyed it a lot more on the reread. The basic premise is we have our two main characters, Poppy and Alex, and every summer they go on a trip because Poppy actually loves traveling a lot. She even made it her career. She was a travel blogger and then ended up working for a travel magazine, and she met Alex in college and they became fast friends and decided to go on a trip every summer. Their friendship is very adorable. Poppy is very outgoing and eccentric, and Alex is kind of puts on a front of being like a boring nerdy guy, but he's actually just really sweet and really funny as well. And their friendship to lovers dynamic was just so fun to read. I think I appreciated it a lot more on the second reread because Poppy has some insecurities that the first time around I just didn't understand, but I think I was just reading too fast. I was like, I don't get where she's coming from at all. But on the reread, I was able to pick up on what Emily Henry was putting down with her a lot more, and I appreciated her as a full character way more. It was an easy 4-star. It's not my favorite Emily Henry, but it was still really good and just a really fun romance to read. Next, I read One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I gave this a 3-star, but the more I think about it, I kind of want to give it a 2-star. I just did not like this book that much. It's about this girl, Emma, who, when she was in high school, she meets this guy, Jess, and they end up falling in love. They get married. And then when they're 23, I think, Jess ends up disappearing from a plane crash and he is presumed dead. Fast forward a couple years and Emma has moved back to her hometown in Maine. Her and Jess lived in California when he died, and she took over her parents' bookstore. She reconnects with an old friend and they end up falling in love. That is until Jess actually comes back into her life. He was not dead from the plane crash. He was stranded on an island and was finally rescued. So now obviously Emma has this dilemma. She is engaged, but her husband shows back up, so she has to figure out what she's going to do with her life. I think I would have liked this book more if we didn't spend so much time with them in high school. The first 50 pages or so is all of them in high school, because that's really where a lot of Jess and Emma's story is. And then you just kind of really speed through them as an adult, and then suddenly she's 30 and I'm still reading her as if she was in high school. So I think that is where my big gripe with this book is. I just don't think we took enough time in the time jump and we just spent too much time with her as a high schooler that it was hard to me adjust to reading her and Jess as adults. Other than that, this was very Hallmark romance. I liked what it had to say about how grief changes you and how you just change throughout life, and how that affects your relationships and whatnot, but I don't know, this was just a miss for me. Okay, next I actually read an entire series, so I'm just going to group them together because I don't really have much thoughts of them individually. I read the Natural series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and this is a YA thriller series. It's basically what if Criminal Minds was teenagers. I'm usually not the biggest YA enjoyer these days. In my 30s, I just found it hard to relate to teenagers, but I love Criminal Minds, and I was just really in the mood for a quick read, and I sped through this series. When I say this is Criminal Minds meets teenagers, I literally mean that. Basically the FBI, CIA, no, I think the FBI creates a program called the Naturals and has 4 or 5 teenagers who all have special talents. There's a girl who's a lie detector. There's 2 profilers. There's a girl who's a hacker and really good at math and whatnot. And there's a guy who can read emotions. And obviously for them to have these skills, all of them have really messed up backgrounds. And here's where my gripe with this series lies. Overall, I gave this series a solid 3 the first book was more of a 4, but the rest was just a solid 3 for me, is because at times it felt like trauma Olympics between the teenagers. It was like who gets to be the messed up one and who has the more messed up life at the moment. And that was just annoying and difficult to read at times. But I did like that this wasn't just like case of the week for each book, that there was like an overarching crime organization situation happening. So all of the books and all of the kids' lives all connected in some way. And so that was enjoyable. But like I said, the trauma Olympics of it all, there's also a love triangle that I did not care for in the slightest. I actually didn't care for the romance at all. I was over it. I was like, I'm not here for this. I don't think the characters had chemistry at all as romance partners, but whatever. But I think if you are like an enjoyer of Criminal Minds and can deal with the YA-ness of this YA series, then I would recommend it. The last book I read in October was The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux, and I actually have an entire reading vlog of me reading it if you want to go watch that. So I won't spend too much talking about it. I gave this 4 stars and I loved it. I thought it was hilarious. It's so different from the movie or the musical, and for being just like so old, it was published in 1910. I was surprised at how funny it was, but yeah, it was just such a fun ride. I love the musical so much, so getting to read the source material was a really good time. Okay, to the one book I read in November was You Killed Me First by John Mars. This is a thriller and it is ridiculous. Like the twists and turns it takes, I was like, there's no way we can have more twists and turns, and yet we had like 5 more twists and turns. I gave this 3 stars for the sheer ridiculousness. This is about 3 women in the UK because this crime happens in November. What is it? The 5th of November? Like Bonfire Day or Guy Fawkes Day is what it is, where the first chapter is a woman being trapped in a bonfire. She has an earpiece in and someone tells her, you deserve this because you killed me first. And then we flash back 6 months to a woman moving into a new neighborhood and meeting her neighbors. And you have now 3 women who live in this neighborhood. One is like a finance woman who has like a secret OnlyFans job. The other one is an ex-pop star who like fell from fame from a cheating scandal. And then the other woman is like just really weird and mysterious. And basically you're trying to figure out which one of them ends up in the bonfire, how they're involved, what have they done in their past. And it is ridiculous. I like don't even want to say anything else because I don't want to spoil anything, but like none of these characters are good people. I was rooting for no one at any point in this book. I did not care for any of them. There's also like low-key a supernatural element that gets introduced at one point. It was like, okay, sure, and where that ended up was so strange. This book is a ride. I think if you're a thriller enjoyer and if you just like a book that has a lot of twists and turns, then you should definitely check this out. But just know that it's ridiculous. Next, I read The Mountain and the Sea by Ray Naylor, and this is a sci-fi book that I enjoyed a ton. I gave it 4 stars. It would have been 5 stars, but I just didn't think it stuck the landing. But basically, it's about humans have evolved into a world with AI to the point where there's actually a living android person. And it's also really funny because like I like how they dealt with this. Like basically this like scientist built an android who can pass as a human, and a bunch of governments were like and like made like androids illegal, and like there were riots and they were like burning her company down and stuff. And I was like, yeah, that's how people would react to like creating an android human. They would be like, we don't want to do that, and cause riots and stuff. But the main premise is that scientists have discovered these octopus species who are able to communicate with humans by written language. And it's like, how do we communicate with them? Do they even want to be communicated with? Like, how did they evolve to be able to have written language? It's a lot about communication and society, and also a lot about AI, which I was surprised at. We actually end up having 3 main characters. We have a doctor who is working on the island where the octopuses are. We have a hacker who is hacking into a system that we aren't sure, but he's like a top hacker, and he talks a lot about AI and like how humans have evolved and use AI as like wellness companions and stuff. And then we have a man who is a victim of human trafficking, who is on a slave ship and who's working for the AI ship in order to fish because they can't have robots fishing because they end up breaking down because of the salt water and the wear and tear. It's like cheaper for the companies to steal humans and have them work than it is for them to have robots work, which is really messed up and a terrifying thought. Like I said, this was so interesting and I really loved it, and it had so many good quotes, but I just did not like where we ended. I think the octopus storyline ended up just like not really going anywhere, and I was disappointed by that. And it was like we had all of these interesting thoughts, but just like no way to conclude them, which was disappointing. Next, I read a duology. This is actually another reread for me, so I'm just going to include them both. It is The Snow Queen Saga by K.M. Shea, the 2 books, Heart of Ice and Sacrifice. These are like just such a cozy fantasy series. They're like extremely predictable. Like the writing is very, I don't want to say simple, it's just not complex. I have reread this series several times. It's about our main character, Raquel, who she has powers and can control snow and ice, very similar to Elsa. She's also a princess, and she's actually banished to a mountainside because the country she lives in is against magic users. So she's been isolated on the top of a mountain in an ice castle for most of her life until her country gets invaded by an army of magic users who are trying to take over her country. You would think she would join the magic users, but they are actually terrible people, and they like are enslaving and torturing non-magic users, and she's not about that life. So she joins up with some soldiers and ends up going on a quest to free her country. And of course, along the way, there is a romance involved. And it's really funny because I guess it could be considered enemies to lovers, because she ends up having this relationship with a captain of the magic users guard. But he immediately like tries to recruit her, and they never feel like enemies to me. Even though they like fight on opposite sides of this war at times, they like never truly ever hated each other and like never fought full force, if that makes sense. The series just like is full of like really good tropes, and like Raquel as a character is just so tragic and beautiful to me, because her being isolated in this ice castle since she was young affects how she views and how she takes in the world. She's very suspicious. She also doesn't know how to conduct herself in social settings because she never talked to people before. She also tries really hard to not scare people because she has a lot of power. So she does a lot of stuff to try to like minimize and like shrink herself when she shouldn't. And it's just, I just really love her as a character. I love the journey she goes on. And this is just like a really cozy reread that I'll probably reread. But yeah, I think if you just want like a cozy fantasy with stakes, like there is a war going on, but I was never like worried anyone was gonna like truly die, if that makes sense. This is also like clean fantasy, meaning there's no smut, but these are adult characters. So if you're looking for smut, you're not going to find it here, but there is romance. So there's that. The last book I read in 2025 is The Witch King by Martha Wells. This was so good. I knew it would be because I love Martha Wells as a writer, but I was surprised at how much I liked this book. This is a fantasy book that I gave 4 stars. And when I say fantasy, I mean fantasy. A lot of proper nouns, a lot of places, a lot of names, a lot of different like groups of people with names, different species, people with different powers. So there's a lot of information coming to you at once. That was at times overwhelming, but I enjoyed the story enough that I was able to push through, even though I didn't fully grasp the politics of what was happening in this world. This is the first book in the Rising World series, which I only know of one other. I don't know if it's a duology or if there's more than one book, or if there's more than 2 books. I don't know. But our main character is Kai, and he is a demon. And this begins with him waking up in a tomb. He somehow got tricked into being locked away in a tomb because he can't truly be killed because he's able to hop bodies. He wakes up because someone's trying to release him in order to like enslave him again, and that doesn't work out because he's extremely powerful. And he goes on a journey to figure out who betrayed him, how he ended up in this tomb, and then also searching for his missing companions. So during that timeline, we also are going back to figure out how he became like the demon. Because originally in this world, there was a lot of demons roaming the like overworld because they had a pact with like this tribe of people that they could inhabit the bodies of their dead. But a lot of stuff happens to where the underworld gets closed and Kai's the only demon and there's a war, and you figure out how he came together with his companions and learn how he became like the demon. I love overpowered characters. Like I love characters who make plans years in the making, who reveal it 5 years later, who are like the top of their species, top of their game. Well, the reason why I picked this up is because the like back cover says like, "Oh, I didn't know you were a demon," and Kai responds, "Idiot, I'm the demon," and that just immediately draws me in. It was just so interesting. I read it in like 2 days. It was so good. I love Martha Wells' writing, even with all the proper names and whatnot. And even though I like this so much, I'm not really in a rush to continue the series because I think the series doesn't continue with Kai as the main character, and that kind of loses my interest if I'm going to be honest. But I just really loved this book and I loved Kai as a character. Okay, that's all the books I read from October to December. And so let's end this with a quick look at my 2025 stats as a whole. I actually use a Google Sheets stats tracker that I got from Elaine Howland. I'll put a link to her YouTube down below. I have tried to use all the apps. I've tried to use Fable, Storygraph, Goodreads, and there's something lacking in all of them. So I was like, we're just going to go old school and put all of my stuff down in a Google Sheet. Total this year, I read 44 books. Out of the 44, only 4 of those were 5 stars, which I'm very surprised at. But I think it's because there is another book that I teetered on 4 to 5 a bunch. So when we talk about those, I think I'm going to mention that book as well. My most read genre this year was thriller, which has not happened in years, but I think it's because I categorized the Natural series as thriller, and that was 4 whole books. So if I didn't read that series, thriller would not be as high as it is. Also funny, coming right after thriller with 6 books each is romance, fantasy, and sci-fi, which completely makes sense. I feel like those are definitely my top genres. I'm like honestly surprised sci-fi didn't win out, but this is also because whenever I was filling out this Google Sheets, I only applied one genre to each book, where some books could like be in multiple genres, you know. Another stat I thought was interesting that I kept track of was how many rereads I did. Out of the 44 books, 7 of them were books that I reread. I'm trying to actually keep track of that more because in the past, if I reread a book, I didn't count it towards what I read this year because I had read it previously, but I did really enjoy keeping track of that. And I read the entire book, so it should count to books I read in that year. To end this out, let's talk about my 5 favorite books of 2025 and maybe my 2 least favorite, if we want to be a hater for a little bit. I'm just going to go in the order that I read them. So the first book that is a top 5 for sure is The Sword of Kaigen by Emma Wong. This is a standalone fantasy that you've probably heard of before. It's extremely popular on the internet, and that is for a reason. It is so good. It's actually funny because it took me a while to get into. I actually ended up listening to this on audio and reading it on my Kindle. I think that was the way to go because the audio of it, I listened to the audio for the first couple chapters, and that was kind of it kind of eased me into the world. And then once I was able to get a grasp on how the world worked and like the powers and whatnot, picked up the book on my Kindle, it just took off running. If you want more in-depth thoughts of all of my top 5 books, go look at my past reading wrap-ups and you can see my deep thoughts there. But anyways, continuing on. Have to mention Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. Easy 5 stars. Suzanne Collins is an amazing writer. I'm constantly impressed that she can still build on the world of the Hunger Games, not just building on it, but like by adding more to the conversation that makes sense and isn't just like pandering or a money grab. It was just so good, and I'm so looking forward to the movie. I think it's going to be amazing. I'm excited to sob my eyes out. Next favorite is Perry Nessie by Suzanne Clark. It's so good because of the writing style. Like, there's something about the way Suzanne Clark wrote this book that was just so interesting and so addicting and so powerful in Perry Nessie's voice. Just so clear. It's like magic realism, fantasy, but also mystery, because our main character Perry Nessie is like figuring out the world as we are figuring out the world. And it was just so good. Like, it was just good writing. And that's just, I couldn't stop thinking about it after I put it down. My other favorite was The Third Gilmore Girl by Kelly Bishop. This is Kelly Bishop's memoir. You probably know her from Gilmore Girls. She was also in the original production of Company, which I had no idea. And like, I love musicals. Why didn't I know that? But her memoir is so interesting. She is just a fun, interesting person. I also love that she never had kids. As someone who never wants kids, I like reading about people who live fulfilled lives without children. So yeah, just a good memoir. I think also the only memoir I read this year, which is kind of funny because I used to read a ton of memoirs. But anyways, my last top book of 2025 has to be I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. Good God, this book did not leave my brain after I read it. It is like sci-fi, dystopian, what it means to be a human. I loved it. It is so thought-provoking and like satisfying, but not satisfying. I can't explain it. You should just go read it if you are a sci-fi dystopian, what it means to be a human lover at all. It is so good. Ending this video with being a hater, my 2 least favorite books that I read this year was One Italian Summer by Rebecca Searle and Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. I'm sorry. Onyx Storm, I think I'm hate reading the Fourth Wing series. It's just like ridiculous to me. I don't really enjoy it, but I'm honestly just always chasing the high that is A Court of Thorns and Roses, which I think I'm never going to get back. I think I just need to accept that. But there's just so Onyx Storm is just so ridiculous. It just feels like such half-baked ideas, and then like I don't care about any of the couples, which is sad. And yet I know I'm gonna read the next book in the series because I like to put myself through pain, apparently. Speaking of pain, One Italian Summer by Rebecca Searle is the worst romance book I've ever read in my life. Is it even a romance book? I don't know. It's kind of magic realism fiction. I honestly, it's just bad. I have never disliked a main character as much as I dislike the main character of One Italian Summer. She's the worst. I literally have nothing else to say except that book is bad. And like, you cannot convince me it's good. Like, I like can't believe I read the entire thing. I was just like, anyways, I need to move on because I'm going to get angry. Anyways, that is my 2025 reading wrap up. Everything I read in October to December, along with some 2025 stats, my top 5 books that I read in 2025, along with the 2 worst ones. I hope in 2026 I will have even more reading videos, hopefully a lot more vlogs. I'm going to be moving in 2026, and so hopefully we'll vlog that and just vlog more. I just love vlogs. I hope you do too, because I want to be making more of them. So thank you for joining me on my content journey this year. I appreciate all 5 of my viewers. I hope you have a beautiful new year and a beautiful holidays, and I will see you in the new year. Bye.